Every time I see Elon Musk's face or hear one of his god-awful jokes, I'm reminded that the horrors, they just persist.
I heard about the formation of the Peace Summit, and I was like, is that PIEC? A little piece of Greenland, a little piece of Venezuela.
we got one.
All we want is peace.
Okay, I'm gonna.
And I'm not just talking about the escalation of war, the global rise of fascism, and the all-encompassing global climate catastrophe that worsens everything. I'm also just talking about the peculiar horror that a man so desperate for people to think he's funny is almost uniquely, historically unfunny.
Well, Mr. President, they say I wear a lot of hats. And as you can see, it's true. Even my hat has a hat.
It's almost unbelievable how unfunny he is. I've never seen someone with so bad comic timing.
So, the left wanted to make comedy illegal, Yeah. Like, you can't make fun of anything. So then it's like, comedy sucks. It's like, nothing's funny. You can't make fun of anything. It's like, legalize comedy. Yeah.
I might incur some wrath here that I'm frankly quite unprepared for, but you know how some people say that what makes Taylor Swift so popular is that she comes across as kind of a loser, and that's what makes her seem relatable. I wonder if Elon's status as a world historic loser makes him seem relatable to the weird right-wing losers who constantly suck up to him. They think that he's their representative of loserdom, and then so they have to fight for their interests. They see him as a vector of their interests instead of as a kind of anti-democratic, fascistic capitalist that can only drain their lives of meaning and freedom.
It's like, legalize comedy. Yeah.
These are the kind of horrors that were on my mind as I read these two books. The first, Muskism by Quinn Slobodian and Ben Tarnoff, examines Musk as a kind of avatar for the contemporary moment of global capitalism, one which is not defined by small state libertarianism, but by the entanglements of corporate actors and the state. You do also get a sense of his kind of world historic loserdom as well, which is good, I guess. For example, when it describes his changing of his title of CEO at SpaceX to Techno King.
Legalize comedy.
He's just, oh God, he just sucks, man. He just sucks. The second book, The Never-Ending Nightmare, The Neoliberal Assault on Democracy by Pierre Dardot and Christian Laval, examines how neoliberalism is a system of governments defined by its rejection of collective control of the instruments of political and economic power, and it instead promotes a form of undemocratic constitutionalism whereby technocrats simply figure out the best way to uphold the market order.
Here I am in Davos. The reason I come to Davos is because it's a gathering of world leaders, and if you know these people, you can want these one-on-ones, bilateral conversations. Very quickly, you can get a sense of how things are working.
I could see Wolfgang Schäuble, the German finance minister. He was looking at me with, eyes that felt like laser beams, and he gets the floor and he said one sentence, which is the one that I'm going to leave you with. Elections cannot be allowed to change economic policy. Got it?
Both of these works have some obvious crossover, namely, both highlight the role of technocracy as essential to neoliberal governance, although both have slightly different views of what technocracy is. This focuses on the sort of technologist aspect and this more on the sort of economics aspect of it. But Regardless, today I wanted to use both of these books as a sort of generative jumping off point with which I can talk about the authoritarian moment of contemporary neoliberal politics. I will say as well, before jumping in, I do have quite strong critiques of both books. For example, Muskism I think overemphasizes Musk's technological breakthroughs and almost certainly his individual role in constructing the current moment of neoliberal fascist hegemony, whereas the never-ending nightmare almost completely ignores the role of global production regimes and race and gender within those regimes in constructing its understanding of neoliberal hegemony. It instead focuses on a kind of peculiar constitutionalism of neoliberalism's mode of organising society, what we can call its system of governmentality. And it's kind of like the Foucauldian aspects and the Marxist aspects of the book are a bit in tension there, and that's never quite resolved throughout it. But I think both are still useful and are still generative to engage with and to understand the persistent horrors represented by Musk and his god-awful, world-historic, bad comic timing.
Do you like the BBC? Do you like BBC?
Okay, yeah, we're not going to.
Oh, I can't interview you.
Obviously, I work for the BBC.
So but do you like BBC?
I know. I see what you're doing. I'm not going to respond to that. Okay, I think we can finish the interview there. If you want to continue, thank you very much.
Well,
for
come
doing
on.
this. I really appreciate it.
Sure, you like BBC. Come on.
I'm not engaging. All right. Elon, it honestly has been a pleasure talking to you. It really has. And if you want to...
So, early on in Muskism, the authors tell us that many still think of Musk as a libertarian who despises government. We think the reality is inverted. Musk has built his empire by fusing with the state. And this, I think, is the key insight about not only Musk, but the entire construction of neoliberal hegemony. Even while other prominent capitalists like Peter Thiel might preach from a libertarian hymn book, their entire business model is built on deeper and deeper integration within the structures of the state. In 2020, the UK government sold off access to NHS data to Palantir for just £1. And just last week, they were awarded yet another contract to analyse data from the UK's Financial Conduct Authority. They are increasingly operating as part of the state. And this kind of integration is what the authors call the Muskist logic of state symbiosis, whereby public funds would be directed towards private contractors to develop and deliver state needs. In this sense, quote, the state would also become a customer. And this is more than the state funneling money towards the private enterprises, but as Slobodian and Tarnoff argue, is a form of privatization in which not only money, but power flowed from public to private hands. Contractors like Blackwater took on responsibilities previously limited to sovereign entities and were paid to do so. This kind of corporate entanglement creates the conditions of immense profitability for businesses with very little democratic oversight. So power is wielded without any accountability. And this is particularly stark in the case of border security and military contracts.
ICE agents have a new high-tech way to zero in on neighborhoods to raid. The report says it's an app called Elite, and it's developed by Palantir.
It's basically like a Google's map interface where you can look around the United States. You then click on an individual person, and it brings up their name, a photo, most importantly for ICE, their apparent address.
To take an example from the book, actors like Musk could unilaterally cancel satellite connectivity over Crimea to prevent a Ukrainian drone strike on a Russian submarine. The democratic deficit is eerily apparent here. But this goes far deeper than just subcontracting out the functions of the state to private actors. As Dardot and Laval argue, the neoliberal assault on democracy is foundational to its hegemonic moment. At the heart of the project from the outset has been a fundamental anti-democratism. It derives from a determination to shield the rules of the market from the policy orientation of governments by consecrating them as inviolable rules incumbent upon any government, whatever its electoral majority. What Dardot and Laval are emphasising here is that the process of farming out state functions to private actors isn't just a policy programme enjoyed by a particular set of actors, but is a fundamental logic of the state under neoliberalism. The market has to be built and sustained by a state whose actors can't really stray from a particular path.
Elections cannot be allowed to change economic policy.
In this sense, the state-corporate symbiosis spoken of in Muskism isn't just the result of Musk as a particular actor, but the necessary endpoint of a logic of governance. And this goes far beyond the anti-democratic corporate entanglement. As the authors of Neverending Nightmare point out, there is a pervasive anti-democratic transformation across the state as its judicial power is emphasised at the expense of sovereign legislative power, and central banks are empowered to constrain the state's and, by extension, the people's control over monetary policy. And this is a form of what's understood as constitutionalised power, which severely limits the ability of the people, whoever they are, to really influence any aspect of the state. Democracy is completely hollowed out. The dictatorship of capital is constitutionalised and almost made visible where it previously remains invisible. We can now understand how the economic constitution, in consecrating the order of competition, consecrates consumer sovereignty. Citizen voters are ultimately nothing more than citizen consumers. You do also get a sense of Musk's inherent distrust of the citizenry in Muskism. For example, while Musk plays the game of, claiming he's democratizing, various public squares, taking back control of platforms like Twitter, for example.
So, the left wanted to make comedy illegal, Like, you can't make fun of anything. So then it was like, comedy sucks. It's like, nothing's funny. You can't make fun of anything. It's like, legalize comedy. Yeah.
This is always undercut by his paranoia around the actual views of the people. Over the past few years, Musk has been increasingly obsessed with the spread of the so-called woke mind virus.
So I think a lot of people thought when you bought Twitter that this is kind of an outlier. Like, what doesn't fit with these other things you're doing? I never thought that. Because I think you're dealing with big civilizational issues and problems, and I was right on your page. I think Twitter is one of them. I mean, you have talked about this woke mind virus.
Yes.
In really apocalyptic terms.
Yeah.
You should explain why you don't think it's hyperbole to say things like it's pushing civilization towards suicide.
It's the specific neo-fascist mix of racism, misogyny and transphobia most brutally demonstrated by Musk's description of his trans daughter and icon in her own right, Vivian, having been killed by said virus through just the act of being trans. And this deep paranoia around actual people follows the ways in which neoliberal oligarchic bloc is cemented, as described by Dardot and Laval. In discussing what we can call, following Gramsci, the educational role of the state under hegemony, Dardot and Laval argue that what above all characterises the oligarchic system is the ban on supposing that a political logic differing from neoliberalism could possibly exist. And here they're referring to a sort of very economistic idea of neoliberalism's logic, and that is the logic of a strong state upholding the market order. They're not necessarily discussing the moral, educational role the state plays in disciplining moral regimes under neoliberalism. For arguments around that, you would have to go to people like Wendy Brown or Melinda Cooper, who've both done, excellent jobs at demonstrating the role neoliberalism plays in reinforcing traditional gender dynamics through the state's moral discipline. But I think this quote from Dardot and Laval can be interpreted to illustrate both Musk's anti-woke stances and how his mind virus paranoia blended with an intensified neoliberal rationality in his deeply cringed DOGE project, which took aim at streamlining the government through removing the moral and market distorting effects of government projects like DEI and foreign aid.
For you, what's the most astonishing thing you've found out in this process?
The sheer amount of waste and fraud in the government. It is astonishing.
At a high level, if you say, what is the goal of DOGE and I think a significant part of the presidency is to restore democracy. This may seem like, well, are we in a democracy? Well, if you don't have a feedback loop, okay, we would have to, if you it's all right. Tell you, gravitas can be difficult sometimes.
For Dardot and Laval, the oligarchic bloc uses its functions in the media to discipline the state in times when it breaks the bounds of neoliberal rationality. And this usually occurs in periods of crisis, like the 2008 financial crash, whereby the state has to bend the rules of neoliberalism to rescue the economy, and the legitimacy of the status quo bends to breaking point. And you see this in like parts of the transition as well, from post-Fordism to neoliberalism, which involved neutralising an array of movements from feminism to the queer rights movement to racial and post-colonial liberation movements. You know, the state stepped in as an educator, destroyed those movements or incorporated them so that they could really sort of consolidate ruling class, white supremacist, patriarchal power. That's how neoliberalism was born. Post-2008, economists stepped in, argued for austerity measures to discipline the people into believing that the financial crash was about profligacy, welfare, immigrants, and rescue the neoliberal system from the outcomes of its own problems. The financialization, the debt regimes, the exporting of production to the global south. The media, economists, the educational role of the state was needed to step in and maintain that legitimacy post-crisis. And I think in this moment of neoliberal intensification in the wake of pervasive crises, whether that's, the COVID-19 pandemic or the wars and environmental crises that are ongoing at the moment, and indeed, Black Lives Matter, Me Too, these various frayings of the hegemonic compromise, I think that we can understand in that context Musk's social media bonanza against woke as part of a similar oligarchic solidarity against potentially subversive politics, which only intensified as Musk became further integrated within the state through DOGE. In one sense, DOGE, God, I hate saying it. I hate saying it. Absolute loser shit. DOGE was consistent with neoliberal austerity politics. And it was also consistent with the neoliberal assault on democracy. As Slobodian and Tarnoff, citing Slavaggio, argue, what DOGE sought to automate was not paperwork but democratic decision-making. Efficiency became the alibi for centralization.
At a high level, if you say, what is the goal of DOGE, and I think a significant part of the presidency is to restore democracy.
Under the guise of automation, I think what you get with this description is one contemporary aspect of the neoliberal state and its authoritarianism. Automation is a structure which ultimately insulates the state from democratic oversight, and while DOGE ultimately fell apart, because it turns out running a state is hard, it is illustrative of the exact kind of authoritarian statecraft generated by neoliberalism and its cringe oligarchs. In its second sense, DOGE was ultimately an attack on the rights and labour conditions of minority groups within the US, which ultimately aims to ossify the stringent white supremacist social hierarchies upon which neoliberal hegemony has always rested, and which was brought into being in that transition that I spoke about. And this is really where we get into the thing I've been increasingly banging on about on this channel. Neoliberal fascism. Muskism goes to some length highlighting the entanglements between Musk and the far right, where that is his overt promotion of the white genocide narratives from his home country of South Africa, his fears of the so-called Great Replacement, his promotion of far-right figures like Geert Wilders, or his increasing calls for re-immigration, meaning the forced relocation of populations out of the West. Even a stupid AI Twitter model has called itself Mecha Hitler in the past, in a move that really emphasises Musk's position as both deeply cringe and extremely dangerous.
My heart goes out to you. It is thanks to you that the future of civilization is assured.
Muskism is degenerating towards fascism. And while the authors of Muskism offer some bleak prophecies about a world in which he retains his power, a near future in which a worker drone with a Neuralink implant uses the banal evil of the AI-optimized surveillance system to efficiently kidnap and deport migrants while his daughter celebrates the end of the trans mind virus in school. A bleak prophecy. The authors of The Never-Ending Nightmare are similarly bleak in their assessment of the future too, as the contemporary electoral left is captured by and sustains neoliberalism. Our collective ability to overcome increasingly authoritarian aspects of it is undermined, leading to further intensification. In the grim opening to their concluding chapter, they argue, "It is dark. It may not yet be midnight in the century, but the new century has only just begun, has had a very inauspicious start, intensified nationalism, proudly proclaimed xenophobia. Along the gamut of contemporary neo-fascism, strange alliances emerge in which the most unbridled and criminal capitalist instinct mingles with every kind of irredentism. Neoliberal globalization, far from giving birth to a world pacified by trade as the Irenic gospel of its preachers would have it, is the breeding ground of sanguinary confrontation between identities, a retreat into ethnic community." And this passage calls forth the image of Musk endlessly tweeting about taking back England's city or calling for re-immigration, xenophobia pushed through the memes of a billionaire with the maturity of a particularly edgy 14-year-old child. A man who should never have left the Reddit message boards has become the face of neo-fascist loserdom. I don't think this nightmare is never-ending. As instructive as both these books are, and as trite as it can be to end with, what can be done? Just join your union, that kind of stuff. I do think Musk's power is more fragile than Muskism indicates. This is majorly because I think the neoliberal fascist hegemonic moment is not as stable or as strong as it might appear. Neoliberalism governs through crisis. The left is disparate and disciplined by capital. But we have seen in the past 6 years some of the biggest mass mobilizations in history. Global in reach and simmering with anger. There are billions of us who want to end the nightmare. And fundamentally, I can think of few people who are better at garnering hate towards themselves than Elon goddamn Musk. I think we can bring him down. I think we can bring it all down. I think we can end Muskism and the never-ending nightmare once and for all. This video wouldn't be possible without the amazing support of all of my patrons. So if you enjoyed this video, if you feel like you want to do more than just like and share and subscribe, then please consider signing up to Patreon. Tiers start at $2 a month and get a range of benefits, including early access to videos, access to scripts, and $10 and up patrons get their names read out in the credits. So, without further ado, I am just going to read these credit names for you now. Thank you to Demo Squid, Soval Hayes, Anita Anispe, Bonbon, Cameron Blakemore, Daniel Swing, Earl Grey T, Ellis Wren, FD Signifier, Hey Joe, Joshua Moldenhauer, Katie Marshall, Kim Crawley, Nina G Public Relations, S, Unoriginal Name, Violet, Aga Ghost, Aaron, Alex, Kate Soiree, Christopher Poff, Daniel Hughes, Duncan Skinner, Esoteric Fictionalism, Eugene K, J Fraser Cartwright, Jack, Jacob Quinn Schenker, Joel, J.R. Barbarera, Kaspar Gunder Westbarg Larson, Kieran Gore, Lahume, Mason Colbert, Melanie Estes, Margussie, Niels Abildgaard, Paul Singleton, Thea Westfall, Piratical Woman, Rachel Ann, Rachel Mixon, Robin, Tamash Kispeter, TB Skyen, Tim, Tinfoil Pancakes, Tom Price, and Sandra Corbis. And yeah, if you feel like you want to sign up, please do. Alternatively, if you don't feel like committing, there is, you can give one-off donations via PayPal or Ko-fi. And yeah, hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will see you all next time. Bye, love you.